I think we are entering what I define as this like creativity crisis. It's now more important than ever to lean into our creativity as influencers, as marketers, as agents, to really craft narratives that break through that noise.
To kick us off, why don't we have you just start by introducing yourself and then tell me about your career journey? Give me a little bit of like the high level evolution of where you started, and then we'll bring us to current day.
My name is Julianne Fraser. I am the founder of Dialogue NYC. We are a digital marketing consultancy that's based in Brooklyn. I launched the company just over 7 years ago. And we really focus on developing influencer marketing strategies for different luxury and lifestyle brands. A little bit of context on how I got to where I am today. I was born and raised in Western Canada, and I moved to New York about 12 years ago, mainly to attend FIT, the Fashion Institute of Technology, and I had sort of these high hopes that I would fall into the world of fashion marketing. Quickly after graduation, I pivoted and switched to joining Morgan's Hotel Group, which is one of the first boutique hotels in the world, and a really incredible company that allowed me to test the waters in social media marketing right around the time Instagram launched. So early in my career, nobody was really paying attention. Nobody really cared about social media strategies. And it allowed me to test and try and really develop skills quickly in this area that uniquely in this career path, there weren't individuals more seasoned, more experienced ahead of me. So thereafter, I moved over to Lacoste to manage their digital communications in North America. And after that, joined a startup accelerator. So kind of going from large corporate companies to developing and supporting pre-seed or Series A, Series B startups. And so throughout all that time, I was able to dabble and test various aspects of influence marketing, from some micro collaborations, developing communities for startups, to doing large-scale macro influencer trips with Lacoste, and really quickly learned that there was an opportunity in our industry to kind of fine-tune the way that we think about influencer. There were so many players. We call it the wild, wild west. It's even more wild today than ever before. And so in starting Dialogue 7 years ago, I kind of took the benefits of all the various approaches from PR, performance marketing, and platforms that I experienced, and developed sort of a streamlined strategic approach to it, which 7 years later, we're still, developing, growing, and helping brands, develop those communities for their around their brands.
That's awesome. And, influencer marketing, a lot of people don't even really know what that is. Maybe we can start by defining influencer marketing, and then we'll kind of dig into some of the knowledge you have to share with our audience.
Definitely. Well, I think the first question is defining influence, because I think there are sort of these expectations that an influencer is an individual who might have, tens of thousands of followers on a certain platform. But I think the way we think about influence can be so wide sweeping. And it's not only an individual's reach and online community. There can be a lot of strategies of offline influence, individuals that have great cachet and impact within their niche communities. There's also ways to really leverage and empower your top customers as influencers for the brand. So I think the first step that we do with the clients of ours that we work with is defining influencer in sort of a various different levels, both type, tier, and category. So the types might be what we define sort of as a more traditional digital influencer is someone who their full-time job is managing their social channels. They might be across various platforms, and this is what they're doing. It's their sole, source of income and focus. So these are individuals that have developed and amassed a really highly engaged community. They're experts in content creation, and they'll be highly, motivated to partner in content creation or paid collaborations. The second type is a tastemaker. This is someone who has amassed a following as a result of their passion or their interest. So it might be an entrepreneur, it might be an athlete, it might be an activist. Their full-time job is not managing their social channels, but they have really amassed this highly, highly engaged and attentive community. And the third type is an expert. So this might be a doctor, a nutritionist, a stylist, a dietitian, all of these various facets, and generally across, Patreon or YouTube or maybe Substack, they've found ways to really express and share their expertise. And again, this isn't their full-time job. So I think that's the first really important way to distinguish between the types of influencers, because the way that you are pitching and offering an opportunity to a digital influencer is going to be drastically different than a tastemaker and different than an expert. So that's sort of the first. The second being tiers. We've heard of, macro, mid-tier, micro, and nano influencers. I think those are standard across all brands, but really defining what follower count in each of those categories is different for every brand. So, we've worked with clients over the years like Sakara Life that are able to engage individuals with millions of followers in exchange for just their meal programs. And then we have others that, are just getting started and are working with nano creators underneath, below 10,000 followers. So I think defining what those buckets of reach are for your brand is different, but it's important to kind of distinguish between those four tiers so that, again, when you're approaching, a macro or mid-tier influencer, they likely will have an agent or different objectives in mind. They might be looking for longer term deals. So that's sort of the second important distinguishing factor. And the third being categories. So a brand of ours or a client of ours might be in the culinary space, but we don't recommend they only work with culinary or foodie creators as their category. So categories might involve parenting, mom influencers, culinary influencers, health wellness, fashion, lifestyle, travel. And again, I think defining what categories are critical to your brand is important so that you're diversifying that message and you're working with a wide variety of creators that are going to speak to different target consumers across the board. So that's sort of how we think about defining the word influencer. And it's a really good place to start for many brands just getting started is, okay, what makes most sense and which type, tier, and category of influencer will really have the most impact for our brand, and how can we approach those relationships differently and strategically?
That makes a lot of sense. And I think, in order to effectively leverage an online partner or a collaborator to spread your message, you want to make sure you have a great thing out there that they're referencing, right? Whether that's your own social media content or whatever the call to action is for that influencer campaign. Do you have advice for businesses about how they can just show up online so that when they do work with an influencer or partner with someone, they have a good presence and they're actually putting their best foot forward?
Yeah, I think that's a really great question, because so often brands will come to us very eager to get started in the world of influence marketing. It's a very hot tactic in the world of digital marketing. And now more than ever, just the changes and shifts of algorithm and whatnot, so much more focus is being put on influencer. That said, we always like to define it as like the cherry on top of your marketing strategy. And if we do our job well, it should accelerate your brand marketing, your performance marketing, your creative, all these various facets of your program. And so in order to reap the benefits of influencer marketing, you really do have to have all of those pieces in place. And so what that might look like from a brand marketing perspective is a really strong and engaging social strategy defined by a clear aesthetic. Oftentimes, the first thing an influencer will do is go to your Instagram account or your TikTok account and make sure they're brand aligned with your voice, with your aesthetic. So, really establishing that strong organic social strategy with sticky content and campaigns that have your customers coming back. So not just putting out updates about the product and the brand itself, but finding ways to create narratives and dialogues, for lack of a better word, to really kind of engage your community and have them coming back often. So that's step one, across whichever platforms make most sense. And it's a lot to manage various different social platforms. So it's important to really focus on the ones that will be most impactful. Second being PR, and I think traditional public relations has really changed and evolved over time. Not only, traditional media outlets being in one facet of the strategy, but can often come to life with affiliate PR. If you're a brand that offers a product, there's really valuable ways to lean into affiliate strategies with many different publications, events, and experiential marketing kind of tying into PR, and so on and so forth. There's various different facets of your brand marketing, but it's really important that you have the PR, the partnerships, the social strategy, the strong aesthetic and brand identity in place first, because when you engage creators, they're going to really add fuel to that fire and start to kind of develop the flywheel. And if you're drawing all these customers to your platforms and they're not in a place where you're able to capture and retain that customer base, it's all a waste of money to engage those influencers. So I think first and foremost, that brand narrative that really differentiates yourself. And then second being your performance marketing. So it's different for every brand, but it might be, social advertising. It could be SEO strategies. It can be display ads, whatever makes most sense. But again, influencers should weave into that. And some of the best performing ad creative for our clients is influencer UGC, really real and raw testimonials from creators. So I think that's always a great place to start across the board. And even if you are, a very, very early stage brand, laying all of those pieces in place before you activate influencers is pretty vital to be able to achieve what you can from the influencers you partner with.
Okay, awesome. I know your company has a lot of expertise working with clients over time and really not just doing one execution or campaign, but building a relationship and really evolving how you work together. Let's talk a little more about that. What advice do you have for working with collaborators or brand partners over time?
Definitely. I'm very fortunate and proud that a great deal of our clients that we've worked with now for 3 years, 4 years. We have one client that just signed on for their 7th year working with Dialogue from the very beginning. And I think it's a testament to how you can really think about influencer marketing as sort of this evolving strategy. It's not just about gifting and seeding or paying an influencer once. There's so much importance behind our strategies in developing what we define as this influencer relationship roadmap. So again, it's different for every client, every industry, but we think about how can we introduce a creator, an influencer to the brand day one. And regardless if they have millions of followers or if they're a nano creator, the very fundamental, and this is very obvious, but you'd be surprised how many brands don't think of it this way, is introducing them to the product. Do they like the product? Is it authentic? You cannot fake. And I think that's, the biggest issue in our industry right now. There's so much noise. There's so many hashtag ads. There's so many creators talking about products that they really have never tried. And so it's really important to start those relationships by gifting the product, developing, a feedback loop and getting that, response about the product, about the brand from the creators. And then developing a second, third, and fourth way to engage with those creators. And what we develop as part of this roadmap is the first level being what we define as just a traditional influencer. So it's someone who received the product, they posted, they shared, and they did exactly as we had requested, whether it's through a paid or gifted collaboration. The second level we define as evangelists. These are creators that are coming back to us saying, I'm obsessed with this product. It's unbelievable. I've woven it into my life. I would love more of the product. I've shared it with so many of my friends. That's about 15% of our collaborations that we're getting this really, really highly engaged, passionate creator. And we want to find ways to nurture that relationship above and beyond. So that might be introducing them to the founder of the brand. It might be inviting them to an intimate lunch or dinner. It might be inviting them to a retail event. It could be featuring them in a blog and sharing their story and using the brand as a platform, almost like a PR opportunity for the creator. So getting really, inventive in how you can nurture an evangelist above and beyond an influencer. And then finally, the ultimate level is what we define as an ambassador. So of the evangelists, we'll slowly, take them along this roadmap to ideally what we define as an ambassador of the brand. These are individuals that, could make for great product collaboration. So, they've used the product for a year or 2 years, and we want to put them on the face of it. Or they might host an event with their community because they have such a highly engaged audience. Or, they'll get first access to new product launches, and they will provide amazing feedback about this because they've known and used the brand's product for so long. So again, I think this can be so different for every brand, but I think it's really important if you're just starting out in developing an influencer community to have this in mind. How will you introduce an influencer day one, but how will you take them, along this roadmap unique to the opportunities and the strength of the relationship, and find ways to constantly re-engage. So for a client, for example, Little Spoon, it's a baby food brand that we've worked with for 7 years. I like to kind of define it as developing sort of this Garden of Eden, and we have laid the foundation and the soil, and we planted, year one, and we've continuously nurtured those plants. And now 7 years later, they are reaping the rewards and the incredible ROI from influencer marketing, because you can't buy that level of authenticity of a mother who has used Little Spoon baby blends and toddler meals and snacks throughout 2 or 3 of her children. It's just the most powerful testimony. And again, it's because we were thinking of ways to nurture and strengthen those relationships over time.
I love that. And you mentioned opening a feedback loop with these people. And I think that's a great tie over to this show. We talk a lot about feedback and not only listening to your customers, but maybe actioning on some of that feedback. Talk to me about some of the ways that you've helped your clients leverage their influencer audience as a feedback loop.
Yeah, I think what's so vital in again, developing a really strong influencer strategy is to see this as a two-way street. And not only can influencers be very beneficial to your brand in helping to amplify, drive brand awareness, conversions, whatever the objective might be, but also we should always be thinking of ways that we can support and nurture the influencers' objectives, their personal brand. And so this two-way kind of approach to campaigns not only brings the creator to the drawing board and helps them define with us what's the best message and how can we communicate this collaboration, but what that really forms is a really strong feedback loop that you can almost leverage your influencer community as a focus group. So when you're testing and trying new product, when you're thinking of repositioning your brand, when you're coming out with new brand imagery or a new aesthetic, the influencer community that you have started to nurture and build can be so valuable. And so a few ways that we think about that: every week we send what we define as this, like the dialogues of the week, to all of our clients, and we're sharing with them the feedback from our influencer community, the good, bad, and the ugly. So the really positive testimonials, but also if they've had a reaction to the product, or if they were underwhelmed by the packaging that they received. All of these things that you wonder about your customer, you can really ask from your influencer community, and it'll help for you to not only improve the way that you're engaging influencers, but also the way that you are positioning or presenting your brand to the public. So I think the more that, you can think about influencers not only as a megaphone for your brand and just, speaking your key messages, but really this community that they are an extension of your team and they are really invested in the development of your company. That's where the magic starts to happen in terms of reaping the benefits of influencer and also differentiating yourself from all of your competitors, because it is a sea of sameness out there that is so competitive. So many creators are being engaged and gifted and paid by different brands. And so how can you really break through that noise? It's through these authentic relationships and the roadmaps is ways to really kind of nurture them over time.
I love that. And I think, for my small business owners that are listening, You were saying the evangelists, right? Like, who are the people who maybe you align to do a collaboration and then they just fall in love with the brand? And to me, I think of all those 5-star reviewers that these business owners have, right? Can you talk about maybe some of the ways that brands or businesses can repurpose that feedback when it's positive and try to maybe get more awareness around that feedback that they hear from their influencers or their customers?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think the power of a testimonial is vital for a lot of brands just starting out. And so certainly leveraging the feedback from a creator is an important one. But I do think that you've identified a really key piece of our strategy is that, yes, the dialogue method and the way that we develop our influencer programs are multi-layered. So we could use a client like Brooklinen, for example. We're thinking of various ways to work with micro creators, UGC creators, gifting and seeding, paid collaborations, events and experiences, retail partnerships, a ladder to develop what I define as this halo effect, where it's music to my ears when someone says, God, I'm seeing, Brooklinen everywhere. I see Harry's everywhere. I see Sakara everywhere. And it's really through that multi-layered. But one critical piece and one layer that oftentimes brands forget about is that offline influence piece. And that can be really tapping into your top VIP customers as influencers themselves. And so knowing, if you just think of yourself as a consumer, yes, we do turn to, creator content and YouTube videos and Substacks to really define our purchasing decisions. But equally so, we'll turn to our best friends or we'll turn to our colleagues and ask for their recommendations and what they love. And so I think it's really important not to lose sight of the importance of offline influence and how can we develop these influencers for the brand, which might be your top customers, and really looking at testimonials on Yelp or looking at reviews on your website or whatever the platform might look like, and really identifying those people and finding ways to nurture and develop a roadmap for them as well. So is it offering an affiliate kickback or an incentive for them to promote the brand? Is it empowering them to host these sort of community events and get their community involved and providing them with the resources for that? It might be offering them a really special or curated experience at a retail level or to an event, whatever it might be, to not overlook the power of someone who might not have a huge reach online, but has a huge, significant offline influence. So a really important, piece of the strategy for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I want to stay on this theme of building community. I think you have a lot of expertise with that, but you also have a lot of expertise with it being creative and unique. And I think that's important when you're talking about the digital world, because like you said, there is so much noise. What advice do you have for businesses to help them build community, and how can they use creativity to do that effectively?
I think we are entering what I define as this creativity crisis. And I think especially in the world of influencer marketing, everybody is kind of playing a piece of it. It's the creators who are choosing to work with brands they've never tried. It's the agents that are negotiating deals on behalf of the creators that aren't authentic. And also it's marketers who are developing creative briefs and just blasting them to thousands of influencers and they're reading off a script. This sort of cookie cutter approach to influencer marketing is leading to this huge surge of inauthentic, cringeworthy ads. And it's leading to a lot of customer distrust and a lot of customer fatigue. Just thinking of yourself, rolling through social media, you start to just skip over these types of partnerships that are not real and that are paid for. So I think it's now more important than ever to lean into our creativity as influencers, as marketers, as agents, to really craft narratives that break through that noise. And I think it's what makes us unique as an agency on behalf of our clients, where we're getting in a room and sure, a client might come to us saying we're launching this particular product, whether it's a new eye cream, let's say in April. Okay, so let's look what makes that eye cream unique and different. Who is the target consumer? Is there a really interesting narrative that will really resonate right now culturally? What are the type of partners that perfectly align with this narrative that will really speak to it authentically? Taking the time to create really, really thoughtful campaigns is vital. And I can give an example. Just over a year ago, again, our long-term client, Little Spoon, launched a nostalgic line of products. And so Little Spoon's coming out with, they launched a new line called Lunchables, which really aligned with sort of the nostalgia of the 1990s for millennial parents, but with organic and whole ingredients. And so we took this product launch and partnered with their creative director and their marketing team around this campaign of, so much has changed since the 90s. We leaned into, partnerships with Melissa Joan Hart, Sabrina the Teenage Witch, and Urkel, and Dawson from Dawson's Creek. And we engaged these influencers in a launch video for Lunchables. And then the second layer of that were all these 1990 celebrities like Lance Bass that are now parents, and we got them speaking about it. And then we engaged, macro creators, mid-tier, micro. We did a huge high volume of gifting, but it all tied back to this one message that millennial parents can really connect with. We all ate, Lunchables and Dunkaroos, and we're all thinking about the importance of offering our children now healthy alternatives. So it was something that was funny, was creative, that really set Little Spoon apart from, its competitive set. And it really resonated. It drove unbelievable revenue within the first 30 days. I think it broke their website within the first handful of days, and just record sales for both product launches, far and above what they were slating towards it. And so it just speaks to the importance of creativity. We could have just gone out and had creators read off a script of the, organic ingredients of this new launch or whatever it might be, but because it was a narrative that was so relatable, all of the influencers, the hundreds of influencers we engaged for this campaign, interpreted it themselves and what their story was from the 90s and their childhood and what their current story is with their children. And it just led to this really, really authentic, amazing viral campaign that really works. So I think the moral of the story there is just not to overlook the importance of creativity. This isn't a performance marketing tactic. You can just flip a switch and churn and repeat. It has to be done with a lot of creativity, a lot of authenticity, and focusing your energy there first above anything else is really what will help you reap the rewards in the long run.
Totally. And I think it's such good guidance to hear how a big brand or company does it, especially at a national scale, right? They're trying to reach people all over the place. And then there's things about that the small local mom and pop can take and apply to their experience, especially when we think about like the right overlap audience. So when you were picking or highlighting people that would be related to who these people think of when they think of the 90s, that makes me think about how the local business can zone in that same way, right? You're not necessarily just looking for people with big followings. You're looking for people that overlap with how your product or service intersects with your customers' life, right? Like, what is the intersection there of their experience and audience and who they're talking to and how it ties back to your brand? You made a mention too about, speaking to what's happening in current events and things like that. That kind of led me to think that maybe you have some good advice for if businesses or brands are dealing with social media in hard times or tumultuous times.
I've had my company now over 7 years, and there has been a lot of shifts and changes during that time. But I'd say the last 4 to 6 months has been the most tumultuous, I think, for everyone on a national level. But just a lot of change and a lot of hardships from the natural disasters and the hurricanes and the wildfires. Obviously political changes, a lot of impacts on the platforms themselves, from a potential TikTok ban to shifts and change in the algorithm. Kind of all of these different features compound to a new landscape that brands are navigating when it comes to developing their social channels. And so I think, a few things to to keep in mind there, certainly, we get asked a lot by our clients of how to navigate something when, there's global unrest or there's a national disaster, all these very sensitive communication points. How do you promote, your latest pizza flavor at a local restaurant level? It just feels tone deaf, or it doesn't feel appropriate, but also to go completely dark on social media isn't, advantageous either. So I think there's certain ways to weave into it. I think having a little bit of flexibility, not only on your influencer partnerships, but your social campaign calendar, not being too rigid around particular launch dates, having sort of in mind a launch week, having as much flexibility that you can bake into your program so that you're not putting all your eggs in one basket. I also think that goes hand in hand from the influencer campaigns. If you're thinking of investing all of your budget in just one massive creator campaign, my recommendation is to really diversify it across as many partnerships as you can, because there's so many X factors. So it's just really important for brands to be aware of that, to diversify, to add flexibility, really kind of be cautious in terms of where you're investing, but also test and try. Now is the time, now more than ever, to actually be curious and try new platforms. As it seems counterintuitive because you don't want to be testing and trying, but in fact, that's what it's going to take to redefine your strategy looking forward. So yes, lots of changes coming, but actually some good opportunities might come out of it because it's shaking you up from your, tried and true marketing approach, and it's forcing us to get creative. And so I think, there's a lot of ways to navigate all of these different factors that are converging, but just to really lean into creativity, to be curious, test and try, and to diversify, the way in which we're allocating budget and spend.
That was super helpful advice and guidance. Where can people connect with you to learn more about your work, or maybe inquire to see if they're a good client fit for you?
Definitely. So we are Dialogue NYC on Instagram, also our website, Dialogue NYC. And anyone can reach out just at the email info@dialogue.nyc if they're curious to learn more about what we do or our services.